We are in for a rematch. Both President Biden and former President Trump have secured enough delegates to earn their respective parties' nominations following another round of primaries.
And that includes Washington's primary. Fox 12's Mia Villanueva joins us now in studio with those details. Mia, good morning.
Kim and Shanna, good morning. This is the first presidential election rematch since 1956, when Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower defeated Adlai Stevenson, the Democratic opponent he had 4 years prior. Now, ahead of polls closing in Washington, President Biden had already won the 1,968 delegates needed to secure his party's presidential nomination in the upcoming primary and general elections. He ended the night with 2,015 delegates. Securing the nomination is a formality for an incumbent president, but it does allow for Biden's campaign to show widespread unity among the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, Trump clinched his nomination with 30 delegates from Washington, closing with 1,241 delegates total. Trump securing his spot as a Republican nominee does have people asking, how many ex-presidents have returned to the White House? So far, just one. Grover Cleveland is the lone president in U.S. history to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, successfully pulling off what Trump is now attempting to do himself, which, of course, is to win the White House back from the opponent who took it from him. Reporting live in studio, I'm Mia Villanueva. Good day, Oregon.
All right.